Looking back at your prelim task, what have you learned in the progression from it to the full product? Looking back at my prelim task, I noticed that I had lacked basically all the generic conventions of conventional music magazines, and the conventions that I did add within the prelim were completely by accident, as I did not know what they were at that given time. Conventions such as the masthead, pull quote, pull lines, pugs, and other little conventions I added the first time round, but these were simply added through first-hand observation, whilst looking at various magazines scattered throughout the media room. I had to use these for information, as that was basically the first time I had come into contact with a music magazine I had to break down into pieces of information. But yet I wasn't totally without information concerning magazines in general, as I subscribed to a Sony PS3 magazine. But yet, I guess that's why it looks more like a gaming magazine than a music magazine. At this part of the magazine production, I was basically bringing together elements of other magazines I have seen and brought them all together in a jumbled mess. This, in comparison to my finished 4 pages I had created, I actually can't believe the amount of progression I have made in such a small amount of time, basically saying that my first project was very poor in comparison. The main trait I have learned from this course has to be the importance of magazines' generic conventions within its media platforms. This is evident when you look at my finished front page next to my prelim task. I also learned how to use various different softwares that professionals use to construct the likes of Kerrang and Enemy. Softwares such as Adobe Photoshop, Adobe InDesign, and Adobe Fireworks. Photoshop used to edit, airbrush the images, making them fit for purpose for the magazine. InDesign used for its pinpoint accuracy whilst laying out information and images. And then Fireworks is used to create images and logos. And in my example, my masthead. Obviously, these programs are essential towards the quality of a music magazine. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised by the look of my prelim task, as the only software I used to create it was Adobe Photoshop, leaving the rest of my generic conventions to suffer for it, as my masthead and cover lines had to only be simple, boring fonts. Instead of images I could create or refine myself to make my magazine look more interesting and attractive. Because of this lack of creativity, my first magazine looked boring and extremely monotone. Within my new completed magazine, I have used the same colours, but with different connotations in my opinion. In my prelim I used red and yellow simply because they were simply the 2 primary binary colours used within Kerrang. But as I have used them within my final product, I had realised that these colours connote danger, as these colours are used within danger signs, and obviously red is also the colour of blood. I use black to also connote evil and suffering as well, so I believe I have learned the value of colours through their connotations, and obviously how they contrast with each other on the page as well. As these pointers were being void within my mind whilst I was constructing my prelim, I learned how to use software such as Adobe Photoshop to a greater extent of that when I was creating my prelim task. Mainly I learned how to airbrush my models within my photos, making them look more appealing to my target audience, making the images look like an ideal self or an ideal partner to my female readers. Whilst on my prelim, the image remains the way it has when I took it. Also, taking a majority of the background on my prelim front cover, so the image remained intact, whilst my magazine one was cut out, airbrushed and rearranged. That's quite a difference between the quality of the images, and it is rather evident in this comparison. Using Adobe Fireworks was very efficient, as I used it to create my masthead and many of my banner-related images, making my magazine look more original. I even made my own banner in Fireworks that I converged with my masthead to challenge conventions of conventional magazines and to make my magazine more appealing to my target audience. InDesign was very useful software to come to terms with, as I had used it to lay out just about all of my pages, especially the pages that were filled with large quantities of text, such as my contents and double page spread. This software made it very easy for me to manage my work, one reason why my product is better than my prelim task. All the text within my prelim task did not really fit within itself, as some of the more primary information would go unnoticed, as it would be the same size as my subheadings and lesser valued stories. Whilst on my front page, it is clear that the larger writing displays the more in-depth stories, and the smaller writing is the information they need if they were attracted by the big text, making my final product once again more appealing than my prelim. I have learned the value of taking information from my target audience and then applying it to the completed product. Because within my completed product, I asked my class whose age reflected that of my target audience's metal enthusiasts. But then I also asked my models what they liked and what they would want from a magazine. And because these are basically my target audience, it was as if I was speaking to the imaginary entity itself, as I made my models representative. Whilst with my prelim, I did literally no research on my target audience. But as I was a part of that audience, being a college student, I simply worked from my own assumptions of what would be written within a conventional college magazine. Thus, my completed product is more relevant for its target audience than the prelim is for its target audience. Because I have researched my target audience, I have been able to create content within it that appeals to my target audience, unlike my prelim. I have taken into account elements of my target audience like they are digital natives. Thus, I have put in technological prizes and deals that would appeal to them. Whilst, as I said, my prelim is simply based on assumptions and experience.